Welcome to the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. I'm Kevin C. Neese.
And I'm Mike Poteet.
And I'm David Atwell, and you're listening to episode 38, Star Trek at 800. We'll start off with some Star Trek news.
And then we're going to geek out about Season 2, Episode 3 of Lower Decks. We'll always have Tom Paris.
And then we'll answer our audience question right after our main topic, Star Trek at 800. We're going to talk about Star Trek that has now reached 800 episodes and talk about some of our favorite episodes and what Star Trek is now. It's going to be a fun conversation. Stay with us.
What up? We doing sci-fi stuff today?
Every day.
You know, the minute Women at Warp came out with that T-shirt, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I tweeted and Instagrammed it, but they came out with a T-shirt of that phrase, that saying, "We doing sci-fi stuff today."
It's an instant classic.
I bought that T-shirt immediately.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's great. Go get it. WomenAtWarp.com. Go pick up the We Doing Sci-Fi Stuff Today T-shirt, and then at us, tweet at us and stuff with you wearing the shirt, so you can show us that you're part of the cool kids. Because I have that shirt. I actually have. Anyway, so how are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Great.
Fantastic. That's
good. The power's on.
Yeah. David's been experiencing blackouts.
Yes, I do not live in the Star Trek future yet.
Not that kind of blackout, people.
Electrical blackouts.
Electrical blackouts. David is a responsible adult.
Most of the time. Yeah. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. Yes, I'm glad to be here. And if I vanish suddenly, you'll know why.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. Well, I think you folks have some Star Trek news. I don't think I have any, but you guys do. So fight out amongst yourselves. Who gets to go first?
Well, the first one is just a minor thing, but
see, David, he just dominates. He just comes in I'm doing it first.
Well,
shut up, Mike. Sit down.
I'm just saying, I've got a lot of podcasting experience, and you just have a lot of dead air. Somebody just doesn't jump right in.
Go for it.
All right. First one is that if you do watch Star Trek on Netflix, just so you know, at the end of September, the original series, Voyager and Enterprise, are leaving Netflix. Probably the only place to watch them at that point will be on Paramount Plus. So if you're watching Star Trek on Netflix, hurry up. Binge faster.
Right.
I'm Governor all she's got, Captain. You cannot break the laws of physics, but you can watch more episodes a day, I guess. But yeah,
I guess, yeah.
Get it done quick.
Oh.
This is why physical media is still a good thing to have sometimes.
It's true.
And I spent years of hoarding gift certificates from Barnes & Noble to get my 7 seasons of TNG on DVD because they were so darn expensive, like $100 a season when they came out.
Yep.
And I see them come out in the remastered edition on Blu-ray and in slim cases, and I'm like, no, it was too painful collecting it all the first time. So.
No kidding. Yep.
Well, I bought them. I don't know if I bought them all. I think I bought some and they ended up being bootleg or something. And I was buying them used and stuff. I would not pay full price for those things. So I wouldn't pay more than $30 a season. But I didn't end up actually getting all of them except for bootlegs, which I didn't intend to buy. I didn't realize were bootlegs. But then, but I did get I do have the Blu-ray set. I got the Blu-ray set, and I'm gonna get. All of them, all the Blu-rays, all this stuff.
Somewhere at my parents' house, I've got all 7 seasons of Voyager.
Nice.
But that is all I've bought in physical. Because after I bought all of those, they all got on Netflix. So,
So that's interesting. I think I didn't actually realize that Star Trek was on Netflix at this point because I've been on Paramount Plus since the CBS All Access days.
Fun fact, it rebranded to Paramount Plus on my birthday this year.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
That's there's another little tidbit of Star Trek.
They gave you a mountain of entertainment.
They did do that.
Except none of the movies. There's Star Trek Into
Right.
Darkness
What's
and
up
Star
with
Trek
that?
Beyond. There used to be more Star Trek movies on Paramount Plus than there are now.
I thought all the various branches of the Star Trek media family had finally made peace.
I don't understand.
Well, they have
why they're
made
not all
peace.
on
I
there.
think this is just like lingering contracts from.
Maybe so.
okay.
Distribution deals with Amazon,
Obligations
and stuff like
to
that.
fulfill first.
That's probably true. But they did have a few of the original crew movies and stuff for a while, and those are all gone now. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I hope they get it sorted soon because I want all my Star Trek on the service that I'm paying for
Yep. Me too.
exclusively for Star Trek.
Now, one thing I will note is that the audio quality when it was CBS All Access, at least, the audio quality was a little bit worse than it was on Netflix. I don't know if they
Really?
fixed that or not, but I happened to be watching, I think in prep for an article or something, I happened to be watching Measure of a Man last year, and I started watching it on Paramount Plus, and I was like, I can't really understand what they're saying, and I flipped over to Netflix and it was fine. So they may have fixed it by now, but at that time it just wasn't great.
Interesting.
So yeah, just a thing to watch out for.
Well, we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yep.
Mike, what's your news piece?
Well,
What you got?
speaking of Paramount Plus, next week when Star Trek Day, September 8th, rolls around, the 55th anniversary of the original series premiere, Paramount Plus is going to be having a live streaming event. I think it starts 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 Eastern, which I think, don't quote me on this, but I think that's the time Mantrap premiered, was 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
I think that's
It's
right.
kind of an odd time. I thought, what is that? But I think I remember that. But regardless, it's going to be full of panels from pretty much all the new Star Trek series that have premiered on formerly known as CBS All Access / Paramount Plus. There's speculation we're going to get a teaser for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. There will be a panel with Anson Mount, Rebecca Romaine, and Ethan Peck. The thing I'm looking forward to most, though, maybe is, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Isa Briones from Star Trek
Isa
Picard.
Briones, yes.
Isa Briones. She is going to sing Blue Skies.
No.
as part of the
Oh,
event.
that's lovely.
Yeah. So I think that will be lovely.
That's
So
so
I'm looking
sweet.
forward to that because it's a great song, and of course it's so thematically tied to Star Trek Picard now, as
Yeah.
well as Star Trek Nemesis.
Yep,
The only
sure.
thing would be better if she and Brent Spiner did a duet.
Duet,
with Blue
yeah.
Skies.
Yeah.
But that is not to be. But there will be also from the Legacy series. There'll be George Takei, LeVar Burton, Sirach Lofton, Anthony Montgomery, Garrett Wang. So it's going to be a great day to. And again, they'll be reviving their hashtag Star Trek United Gives campaign. So when you tweet out using the hashtag Star Trek United Gives, all one word, $1 will be donated and divided equally by Paramount Plus and the Roddenberry Foundation to organizations working for equality and social justice and innovation and the arts here in the real world. So that's
Awesome.
That's next Wednesday, right? September 8th.
That's right. Next Wednesday, which is
2021.
when our next episode will drop.
Woohoo!
So that's exciting. We'll be a part of Star Trek Day. Star Trek Day was really cool last year too. They did this like streaming stuff online and everything, and it was really cool. And they archived all of it, so you can watch it all on like YouTube and on Paramount Plus and stuff. And it's fantastic. I've seen a lot of it, but I haven't seen all of it. And there's a lot of great stuff. So it was cool.
It's awesome.
Yep. So that'll. I expect they will do a Strange New Worlds teaser or something. They've been.
How could they not?
I mean, they just came
Star
out with
Trek
a logo
Day,
the other day. I know,
55th
right?
anniversary. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also hoping they will go ahead and nail down these premiere dates.
Yeah.
Because it's driving me crazy.
Because
Tell us-
again, Paramount Plus is contractually obligated to notify us.
They are.
That's right.
So we can plan our recording schedule accordingly.
That's
Yep.
right.
And would it kill them to give us some screeners?
Exactly. Bang on, sir.
For your consideration, Gospel of Star Trek podcast.
Oh boy, that's great. That's great. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it because I know we've got 10 episodes of Prodigy coming, but we don't even know how many episodes are in Discovery 4. We don't know how many episodes are in Strange New Worlds 1. We know Picard 2 is going to have 10 episodes, and probably Picard 3 will too, and they've been produced back to back. But other than that, we don't know when to expect things or anything. So
Yeah. I mean, I would expect 10 episodes of everything, because I think that's sort of the going rate now. 10 episodes of
I hope not.
Of a series.
I would like to see what I would consider the more flagship series. I mean, the flagship series is Discovery.
Right.
And then I think coming alongside it will be Strange New Worlds. I'd like to see those not go under like 13, because last season on Discovery, I mean, the Discovery started out with 15 episodes. Second season was 14 episodes. Third season was 13 episodes. And by the first season felt a little bit long to me, and 3 felt a little short. I thought we could have used a couple more episodes, especially in fleshing out the relationships between Stamets and Culber and Adira and Gray and all that stuff.
Definitely.
I felt like we could have used another episode or two of development for them. Their relationship, particularly while it's adorable, felt rushed.
I agree.
And so there were certain things like that I thought, we could have used a little more, but we only had 12 episodes. And so I hope Discovery actually goes back to 13. I mean, goes back to like 14, maybe even 15 episodes a season. And I'd like to see Strange New Worlds ride in that space as well. But like you say, it may be 10. I mean, they seem to be giving everybody 10 right now. So I just hope it's not 10 for Discovery.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And I personally, I would love to see like Strange New Worlds harkening back to the old days of 23 episodes of Next Generation per season or whatever.
Wow.
But I think those days are probably long gone.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I agree with that very much. And especially with this many series being produced at once, it's just not tenable. And but the other thing about Strange New Worlds is the format is intentionally more episodic.
Yes.
And so I think that will serve it well. If it is 10 episodes or whatever, it won't feel like Discovery can feel rushed because we have all these arcs going on.
Right.
And while there are what producers refer to as emotional arcs in Strange New Worlds, you don't really have those episode arcs as much, and so you don't have to worry about things feeling rushed at 10 episodes.
That's
or
probably
12
true.
or something like that. We just might be left wanting more, which hey, always leave them wanting more, right?
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so David, you have one more for us.
I do, yeah. If anybody remembers the official Star Trek magazine from back in the day, it has a new name now. It's called Star Trek Explorer, and it's relaunching with it's a lovely set of covers. There's one that's it looks like Michael Burnham in a spacesuit, and that's super cool. But there's this gorgeous cover, this painted. It almost like reminds me of like a comic book cover or something like that. It's got like the crinkles and stuff. It looks like it was.
It's got weathering effect.
Yeah, it looks like it was
nice.
like offset print, like in the 1970s or whatever. And it really reminds me of. It's reminiscent, I should say, of like those trade paperbacks or comic books that are like early days of Star Trek where they didn't know what they were doing and the art didn't really match. So in honor of that, I would like to do a dramatic reading of the back cover of the Star Trek James Blish novelization number 9 because I think it is hilarious and I think you'll love it.
And we will we'll link to this too in the description like we do all our news items, but. David has sent this image to us, and it is flipping gorgeous. I can just say it's so classic.
The Enterprise, the original Enterprise, Kirk's Enterprise, flying low over this windswept Archie desert scene, and then 3 people in spacesuits on the mesa. It's lovely. It's a lovely thing. But this is the back cover of Star Trek. James Blish adaptation number 9. This is from let me real quick flip to the January 1967.
Wow.
All right, so here's the back cover. Star Trek, circling the solar sphere in search of new worlds and high adventure. Solar sphere? What is that? Okay, and then we've got a listing of a couple of characters that you might meet in this novelization. Captain James Kirk, assigned to the top position in space service, Starship Command. Kirk alone must make decisions in his contact with other worlds that can affect the future course of civilization throughout the universe. You guys remember Space Service, right?
Space Service,
yeah. Space
the classic.
Service, I think it's a branch of USPA.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Starship Command. Yep. Science Officer Spock, inheriting a precise, logical thinking pattern from his father, a native of the planet Vulcanus.
No!
Are you kidding me?
The
Not kidding.
Vulcanian expedition.
A native of the planet Vulcanus, Mr. Spock maintains a dangerous Earth trait, an intense curiosity about things of alien origin. You know,
Wow. This
Spock.
is stunning.
Okay, this is my favorite, but not for a good reason. Okay, Yeoman Rand.
Uh-oh.
Easily the most popular member of the crew, the truly out of this world, that's in quotes,
Oh,
the truly out of this world blonde has drawn the important assignment of secretary to the captain
Oh my God.
on her first mission in deep space.
Oh, the cringe.
man.
Oh, the cringe.
With a crew of 400 skilled specialists, the mammoth spaceship Enterprise blasts off for intergalactic intrigue in the unexplored realms of outer space.
400 skilled space people, but secretary to the captain.
But
is
secretary
the
to
most
the captain.
important, did
That's
they say?
right.
The most
Yes.
popular is the
Yeah,
secretary.
easily the most popular.
Because
Well,
she's out of this world. Oh my gosh! Wow. I mean, you
I
had
liked
me. You
Yeoman
had
Rand,
me right.
but
I did too.
they didn't give her much. Well, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's.
Let's
a
not
whole
go
other
there.
thing.
No.
That's a whole other thing. But yeah, no, you had me up until Janice. But
Yeah, no, I mean, I had me up until Janice, too. So,
Well, they probably all they had to go on when they were writing that was those publicity photos of
well,
Shatner, Nimoy, and Grace
now,
Lee Whitney.
listen,
That's
you said
probably
that- you
true.
said that was
holding
in
the colored
60
flashlights. Remember,
You said that was in '67.
67, that's right.
Because it's really interesting. Because all right. So that had to have been after. What's the episode where they introduced Sarek? Babylon, Journey to Babylon.
probably
to Babylon?
not, because that
Journey
was
to
a
Babel,
second season
right?
episode. No, that was a second season episode, and publishing moves slowly,
Yeah.
and especially
Sure.
back
Yeah.
then.
But still, at
So-
some point, I mean, because that was when it was established. Because before that, the only reference you had was, I think, in Where No Man Has Gone Before, where Spock says one of his distant ancestors was human.
Yep.
And so, or distant relatives. I think his distant ancestors was
One of my
human.
ancestors married a
Yeah.
human female, is what he
That's
says.
it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But there. It was established in this side of paradise that Spock's father was Vulcan, because Kirk's egging him on. Your father was a computer, and your mother was an encyclopedia, or whatever.
Yeah,
my
but
mother was
but-
a teacher.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that his mother was human.
But the
Right.
implication, I believe, is clearly that his father was Vulcan
Right.
and had no
yes.
emotions.
Right.
So
Right, but if he says, your father was a computer, your mother was an encyclopedia, that kind of
true.
doesn't-
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It is interesting how this stuff is we have the curse of knowledge now.
Yeah,
So
right,
yeah.
right.
To realize what was actually said and not said, and established and not
Well,
established.
Well,
it's interesting
speaking
how.
of-
Go ahead.
so, speaking of the curse of knowledge, I find the dedication in this book really interesting. James Blish has dedicated this to Harlan Ellison, who was right all the time.
Oh wow!
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's touchy.
1967. Yep.
Well, and the interesting thing too is to see how fluid all this stuff was.
Yeah.
We look at things now in Star Trek, and people will say things, like when Discovery premiered or whatever, or when Tim and I watched the first episode of Lower Decks, and we'll start to form opinions about it. But there's always this flux at the beginning of things. There's always this fluidity at the beginning of things, and give it time, it'll shape up. It'll shape up. So,
Yep.
all right, cool. Speaking
But
of Lower Decks,
Go take a look at
Yeah.
Star Trek Explorer, the official Star Trek magazine.
please do.
Yep.
Hashtag not spawn.
Yeah.
So speaking of Lower Decks, season 2, episode 3.
Yeah.
We'll always have Tom Paris. How did you guys find it?
I
And
liked
if
it
you
a
were
lot. I wish
Tim,
there-
you would say, well, I went to Paramount Plus, and I went to Star Trek, and then I dropped down to Lower Decks. Sorry. Love you, Tim. Go ahead,
Yep.
Mike, please.
I know, I liked it a lot. I was a little surprised how little Tom Paris was in it.
Yeah.
But they got a
no.
great title for the episode out of it, if
Yes.
nothing else. But,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed it. I had fun.
Yeah. I could have stood more Tom Paris, though, definitely.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yep. I thought it was a really good episode. I did enjoy it. I thought this season has given me very heavy Red Shirts vibes, not like the classic series character, but the book by John Scalzi, which is sort of a pastiche of Star Trek in sort of a, I don't know, breaking the fourth wall kind of way. And it kind of has Galaxy Quest vibes and that sort of thing. But this season and this episode in particular gave me really strong Red Shirts feelings. It feels like it's operating on that same level. And I really like that book, and I really like that that way of telling stories. But this one in particular, with like their heavy winking at a lot of continuity stuff, you know, things like, wow, we basically speaking straight to camera, we've never gone on a mission before. The two female leads, we've never gone on a mission before. We don't know each other very well. Well, that's a problem we should rectify in this episode. Or the, you know, the big back and forth about Shax's resurrection, and you know, it's probably just a transporter pattern buffer thing, or a restored Katra, or a mirror universe switcheroo, or the Borg rebuilt him, or the future son from an alternate timeline, or Genesis device, or time ribbon, or trapped in the Nexus.
Nexus and time ribbon,
same thing.
Yeah.
And that one line in the montage episode of the episode later on, in the Nexus, it's always Christmas.
Yes, I love
that. Made me laugh so hard. I'm not quite sure why, but I loved it.
Did you guys catch the so this was full of Easter eggs, obviously, but did you catch the Easter eggs in Shax's costumes during that hallucination?
Yeah. I mean,
what did you see?
What were you?
I saw a Neelix costume.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Really? I didn't
Shax
see that.
was wearing a Neelix costume. I saw him wearing a Lincoln costume, or something of that time period.
Yeah.
I saw him wearing an Enterprise uniform.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yep. I think I might have seen him wearing a Discovery uniform.
Really? Wow.
And I'm pretty sure I saw him wearing a Kelvin Universe uniform. Command uniform.
You saw more than I did. I saw him wearing the Lincoln thing, and I think he's wearing a red shirt and one of those.
Yeah, I think that was a Kelvin Universe red shirt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Cool. That's fantastic. What did you think of the what did we think of the Tendi Mariner story? The Devana Beckett story.
Uh-huh.
Well, it was nice to be playing with the fact that not knowing the first name. You know, it made me think of Star Trek 2009, but also the fact that for the longest time, Sulu, Chekhov, and Uhura were just last names.
That's right.
You know,
it's true.
So I liked that.
I think the story was. I thought it was good, and I thought that it had a lot of really interesting things to say about the person that you are and the identity that you have, and who you like to be and that sort of thing. I personally always try to be the same person in whatever context I'm in, but it's hard, and I don't do it very well all the time. And so, like when Tendi mentions how, like, you know, she doesn't tell people everything, and you know, they both have this back and forth about, like, well, it's hard to really open yourself up, and Tendi doesn't even tell Mariner that she's the mistress of the winter constellations, and that,
right,
like I get that, like it's hard sometimes to really be the same person everywhere, no matter what your intentions are. Yeah, I really felt for that storyline. I didn't feel like it was anything groundbreaking or anything like that, but it did hit me a little bit. You know, it felt poignant.
Well, and I think it's important. It's not something that we see a lot, I think, in Star Trek, because I mean, we do some, you know, like with you know, learning more about what Picard's like off duty, you know, that sort of thing, or going to his family's home, things like that. But in terms of people like, I mean, I guess maybe with Tom Paris, interestingly enough, in terms of people like having a past that they're trying to get away from, or sort of a separate pocket of their lives that they don't share with other people. I think a lot of us have those things.
Yeah.
A lot of us have interests or even groups with which we're connected, maybe online, or maybe in person, you know, depending. And when you're with that group of people, you're nerding about the thing you're nerding about, or you're expressing a side of yourself that you're expressing that you don't get to express elsewhere, and that you might not want to express elsewhere. And there is that kind of sense of bifurcation, even just living in the worlds of like home and work and school and church, or whatever thing you're in, or podcast, you exist as a sort of a different version of yourself, and I think that's an important question of ethics, or how to maintain a sense of self, is, like you say, being the same you are a different person in each of those contexts. Mm-hmm. You can be a different person with different friends. You're having a conversation with somebody really well, and you'll be a completely different version of yourself with them. But there's a core of you, right? Mm-hmm. That should go through all of that, and I think that's where your core self is.
Yeah. There's ways to do that with integrity, and there's ways to do it without integrity.
Right, mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm thinking of the Apostle Paul saying, "I've become all things to all people, that I might win them more." I don't know that that's exactly this, because he's talking evangelism strategy, but certainly he would behave. He had that core. He knew who he was, mm-hmm. loved and saved by Christ, but he mm-hmm. still could be flexible. He could whip out his Roman citizen card when he needed to, and he could mm-hmm. maybe not observe the, I don't know, I think he probably always did observe the kosher laws, but he could acknowledge others didn't have to when that was called for, and,
mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very true. So, I did. I found that interesting. I think that's really, it was interesting to learn that about Tendi, to get a little more of her background and her world,
It's nice because Star Trek so often serves up these monocultures.
Yes.
Every alien is X, Y, or Z, and mm-hmm. So when Beckett is suggesting the plan of going to, or I guess Tendi brings it up. Yes. Oh, I've got this cousin on Bonestel, and Beckett's like, well, if you're okay with the optics,
Right, which is funny because it's funny because she's like, oh yeah, people think we're all thieves and pirates.
And my cousin's a thief and a
cousin.
Yeah, well, and they played with that a little bit in the first season, in the penultimate episode, where mm-hmm. Mariner cast Tendi in this very stereotypical Orion, not the slave girl, but the other.
Well, yeah, it was
the piratey. Mm-hmm. No, she was the piratey Orion, not the.
Was she okay? But I remember dialogue to the effect of, "Hey, because I think Beckett had even said something at some point about how you could be my Orion slave girl or something like that," and she was and Tendi was like, "Yeah, the slave girl thing is that's touchy. We don't want to go there."
Yeah,
right,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that does sort of, that drawing from that episode a little bit, and sort of fleshing out her character to talk more about, this is something that she has clearly struggled with for both seasons now, how she presents herself and sort of what part of her culture she's comfortable with, because mm-hmm. I think that's another big part of it, is that she's not really comfortable revealing not just the side of her to Mariner, but also the culture itself. She's mm-hmm. embarrassed about her Orion heritage.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, because it's it's like that conversation they have in the shuttlecraft, where she's like, look, a lot of, there's not a lot of openness to Orions right now, even in Starfleet, because of the associations that people make with us. And then also, if you go down there as a human, they're going to kill you because they hate the humans so much.
Right.
And it very much kind of harkens back to Spock, and being caught between two worlds, perhaps in a certain sense even more so than Spock, because humans aren't going to get killed just for showing up on Vulcan, or Vulcanus. But there is tension, between the two worlds, and trying to define herself in a way that honors the best parts of where she comes from, but leaves behind the worst parts, and tries to embrace a new way. That's something I think a lot of us are dealing with. Even I know a lot of people who listen to the show are like me, post-evangelical, coming from an evangelical background, but still wanting to hold on to our faith. Mm-hmm. And that can be very hard. And you can be in a situation similar to what Tendi's in, where you just there's a part of myself that is identified by this, but I don't want to be identified with this because of all the baggage it carries.
And all of these people that I knew back then that I'm still going to have to interact with, but like, what do they see me as, and how do they expect me to act, and how do they expect me to respond?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's totally a valid read on what she's doing.
Those things can get very divisive.
For sure.
So that's only part of the episode, though. What else?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that this one it managed to stuff 3 whole plots into one episode.
That's really true. Yeah.
But I think I mean the Tom Paris one was fun, but I think the most interesting one was the Shaxx storyline.
Definitely.
Oh, the Shaxx storyline, really? Oh,
Yeah.
see?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
see, when you said
That was my
3,
favorite as well. Absolutely.
You thought the
I
Tom
actually-
Paris one was more interesting?
I thought the Tendi Mariner thing was the most interesting part of the episode.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But the
So
Shaxx storyline was cool too.
Interesting.
That to me was more color and a little bit of development of Rutherford, and that sort of thing. But
sorry, let me be clear. I thought that of the 2 remaining that we hadn't talked about yet,
gotcha. The
Shaxx
Shaxx story was
more
yeah.
interesting.
No, I
Okay.
agree with you.
I'm
Except
sorry.
for-
I was
for-
trying to parse out. Like,
No.
I thought you were saying that the Tom Paris one was more interesting. I was like, that one was pretty minor.
Except for Bob McNeil coming back.
Yeah, right.
that was yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about what you thought of the Shaxx story.
Well, so I mean, I think that anytime that we're talking about resurrection and life after death, there's so many examples of this across all sorts of fiction, but Star Trek especially, and I just thought that the fact that they were lampshading that, talking about how bridge crew always comes out from the dead, like that's just fantastic. And in an episode where Voyager is heavily mentioned, and Tom Paris's best friend was Harry Kim, and how many times did he die and come back in Voyager? So I think that was an interesting connection to make there. Yeah,
and the twist of the whole thing was that the senior crew are trying to spare the lower deckers by not talking about this.
Not just the lower deckers,
and Rutherford
but
is
everybody.
clearly scarred by whatever. We hear a little bit of what Shaxx tells him in that turbo lift. You go to the Black Mountain and you fight 3 incarnations of your father, and one of them makes you eat his heart or something. So it's crazy stuff, and it's all funny, but it doesn't come off as condescending either. It's like, no, it's really for the best.
Right.
You let us worry about that big stuff.
Right.
I think there's places, right, where people we care about, we keep things from them for their own good, and sometimes we're right to do that. Sometimes we're wrong, maybe. Maybe it would be better if, there was a coming back from the dead 101 course at Starfleet Academy, so that people would be prepared. But, like as a parent, for example, you shield your kids from some things until they're certain ages, and I think that's for the best. Eventually you have to you help them know about what's in the news or the facts of life or whatever or what have you. But so I don't know. I liked that it was certainly played for laughs, as we've talked about, the montage and the Easter eggs, and it really reminded me, as I mentioned to you guys in Discord, of McCoy trying to strike up a conversation about the same topic in Star Trek 4, and Spock won't do it, and McCoy says, "You mean I'd have to die before you deign to discuss your insights on death with me, because we don't have a common frame of reference?" And again, it's the same kind of played for laughs, but there's I thought there were, I don't know, and maybe it's just a small thing, but there was something serious I thought about. You don't know about this, and trust me, enjoy that while you, maybe that's wrong, enjoy that while you can.
Yeah.
There are things in life, enjoy it while you can, where you don't have to worry about such things, right?
Yeah.
We should all be so lucky as to have some things, and I'm sure everybody can fill in their own examples of things we'd rather not have to worry about right now. Enjoy it while you can. Well, I don't know. Does that ring right to anybody else?
I think the weighty things of life, for sure, and maybe it's not even like enjoy it while you can. Maybe it's just like now's not the right time sort of thing.
Now's not that's even better still. Yeah, there's a time for everything under heaven.
Yeah, I really felt like it was sort of played for comedy, I think. But I felt really bad for Sam at the end of the episode when he's like hugging his knees and sweating, and I'm like, you poor dear boy.
He's shattered. Until next week, anyway.
Hopefully, right.
I mean, he's already had his memory erased once. I'm sure they could do it again.
New implant.
Yep, right. I went a completely different direction when I was first thinking about the Shaq storyline, though, because I was thinking about how many times Jesus told people not to tell anybody about, and tried to and that was, obviously not trying to hide some dark, deep, brooding truth from them or anything like that. It was about his ministry and the correct pace and the correct order of the way that he revealed himself to people. And I thought, that's maybe another interesting way of pointing to that. Obviously, it doesn't map one to one, but I think that it still matches up. This miraculous, amazing thing happened. Oh my gosh, I want to tell everybody. Well, hang on. Before you tell everybody, I want don't basically.
Don't have faith because of the signs, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because of the word and what I do and who I am. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't have faith in the signs themselves, right?
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
It's a completely different scenario than what Shax is involved in here with Rutherford, but it is a similar sort of idea. Like, this is a thing that I really want to know, or I really want to tell people about, or whatever. But it is important. It's weighty. It's like meaning of life stuff, too. But for the reason that they've told me, I'm going to keep it a secret for now. I can't imagine being, one of those sick people that he healed, that he told, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Or, I can't, being told that, are you kidding me?
We know some of them went ahead and told anyway.
Right, exactly. I totally get that. And I mean, even the gospel writers don't treat that as anything surprising or negative or bad or anything like that.
Right.
It's like, this happened, and I totally understand. I think if Jesus healed me and told me not to say anything about it to anybody, I would have a very difficult time doing that. So I also feel very much for Rutherford there at the end, not wanting to, or not being able to, being restrained in some way from telling others.
Yeah, I agree. So what about the Paris? What about the Paris part? The part of the episode, it's weird because that's where the episode gets its title, but it's really tangential to the episode. I think I don't feel like it's a core. It didn't feel like a core thing in the episode. It was all just just Boimler trying to get to Tom and running into problems, and
it was probably the most stereotypical Star Trek episode, with the addition of a plate, I guess. But
yeah.
There may be something there about being prepared to be let down when you meet your heroes. I mean, in the end, he wasn't really. He was kind of proud to have a black eye from Tom Paris.
Yep.
But I remember, quick story. I met Walter Koenig and George Takei at back in the 80s at a shopping mall where they were signing autographs for free in the courtyard, in the food court. And I had taken great care to think of a question, what I thought would be an intelligent question, not one of these, in episode 35 you said the ship could only go, warp 6, but in episode 82 you went warp 7. I wanted a question that showed I knowed it was just a show and something. So I asked Walter Koenig, that line of Russian you speak in Star Trek 3, what is that line? It translated, because there were no subtitles and all. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me, and maybe he was, stars are allowed to have bad days. But he looked at me like I asked him a stupid question. Yes. And he told me, but he did it very resentfully, I thought. And so I was always, for a long time, kind of soured on Walter Koenig for this split-second interaction we had in the shopping mall in North Carolina. But, so I thought maybe Boimler was going to have a similar kind of experience where, but no. Paris thinks he's a Kazon and decks him in the face. This is how we kick A in the Delta Quadrant, and Boimler loved it. So,
yeah, and that's the thing. It is an unusual and a strange, and I think it was a great way to sort of put in that pressure cooker of what it's like to have all this built up anticipation for meeting somebody, which I think we've all had at various times. And by the way, I've also met Walter. I had breakfast with him at a con a few years ago, and that's just his personality, sir. That's not anything you didn't. Walter
I've gotten over it. It's been 20-something years.
Walter doesn't
30-something years, but
Walter doesn't mind letting you know if he's irritated or annoyed or tired or whatever. He's very honest and generally unimpressed. But he's a nice guy in his own way.
Meeting in the next minute George Takei, who is so effusive and looked at me and told me he thanked me for my support of Star Trek as though I were the only person he'd ever told that to. It was so I was on cloud nine,
Yeah, so. That's sweet. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that.
I do think it's interesting, too, how all three of the storylines did touch on, in some way, identity and, what it means to be you, Boimler's having this trouble of, not existing in the computer's view. And then there's the whole, do I know another person? Can I know another person with Mariner and Tendi? And then Rutherford, what is it to be alive? What is it to be a human? And what happens, when you die and that sort of thing. And I thought it was really interesting how they all tied up together with, Boimler falling onto the bridge and screaming, "I do exist!" And getting decked in the face as a case.
That's excellent, David.
Yeah, very good. Man, you just
for a 24-minute cartoon.
24-minute cartoon. That ends with a shuttle going to ramming speed and doing no damage.
Bouncing off the shields.
Yep.
Oh, that was brilliant. I love it.
Damage report? None. That was weird.
And then the shuttle is all crumpled.
Yeah.
Oh, that was wonderful. I think that's something I was going to say earlier. That's kind of how the show functions. It functions with fan awareness of the rules and the lore.
Yeah.
And the rules and the way the whole universe operates, and every character has that knowledge.
Yeah,
just about all the main characters have that knowledge, so they can nerd because they're all written like Star Trek nerds. So they know all the stuff about Star Trek ever, and they know how the rules work. So bridge officers come back all the time. Whatever, that's a thing that happens, and we can just roll with it because it's just how the universe functions. So things that would take more time and more effort in other series happen really quickly and easily in this one. But
because they can draw on that.
Because but that's okay because the series isn't really about those things.
Right,
those things are the framework within which we tell the real story, which is the story about the relationships between the characters, which is always true in Star Trek at its best, but I think is a very, very strong intention in the very structure of this series, which I appreciate a great deal.
Yeah.
I had thought also that the whole story with Beckett and Davana, with Beckett and Davana.
Now you're just showing off.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great line. But that whole story with the scratching post and all that, very much reminded me of the kind of trouble that Jake and Nog used to get into.
Yeah.
I was like the river provides, It was very much like that kind of thing, and I loved that. I love that it's yes, even watching Deep Space Nine, some of these stories, I'm like, this could be a cartoon, and it works so well, and it is a kind of thing we've seen before, but it doesn't matter because it's the Lower Decks version, and it's about these characters, and you really get into some things that are pretty unique, and that actually expand the lore of Star Trek, and I think it's great.
Well, and as you noted, they can do it a lot quicker, and that's almost a necessity in a 30-minute show. Yeah,
absolutely. That was the first thing I noticed when I first watched the animated series. I got a couple episodes in, and I was like, I haven't seen a single turbolift ride. Because when they wanted to go somewhere, they just smash cut to being at that space.
Right.
They didn't take the time to have a conversation on the way.
Yep.
And so that made that show a lot more action oriented, and they still had monologues and they still had stuff about philosophy and things like that. But this series, like we were talking about last episode, you'll have character development in the middle of a fist fight. Because it's always happening. People will have conversations while they're doing whatever they're doing, and the action keeps you going. But I think there's even more character stuff built in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so. There's another Star Trek podcast that I listen to. I'm not a part of it, but they talk a lot about how Star Trek is a place. All of the shows are slightly different and telling different kinds of stories, and the through line of it is the place of Star Trek. And so you can tell, your noir mystery, or you can tell your comedy episode. I think that Lower Decks is probably, more than any other series, the one that is about that place the most, because all of these people live in this place and they know they live in this place, and so they can draw, like you were saying, they can draw on those tropes and debate about who was the better superhuman, Roga Dinar or Khan. Those are debates that you would not hear in Voyager or Next Generation, because they were not aware on that level of the universe that they were in, and I think Lower Decks is able to do that in a completely different way, because it doesn't, it just is about the place of Star Trek, and we're going to tell some jokes, versus like Deep Space Nine, which it started off as like a Western frontier town in space, and then in this place, and then it ended up as a war story in this place, and Voyager, which was about being in this place, but then like going far away from this place, and just so all of these things are about this place, and Lower Decks is just about this place, and also we're going to tell some jokes. Yeah,
it's awesome. Yep.
So speaking of what Star Trek is,
oh man, this episode is going to be done. We're going to not have gotten to our main topic. So yeah, let's do it. So this is interesting that we're talking about this and we're unpacking all this stuff that happens in this episode and how cool this episode is, and how, they cram 3 stories into it, and how it relates to the whole of Star Trek, because it is the 800th episode of Star Trek. Yay! And I know there is some debate among fans about this. I've heard people...
That's crazy talk.
Star Trek fans?
Debate among Star Trek fans?
Arguing about something?
I thought just Star Wars fans did that.
No conflict between the bridge crew, people. You got to stop this.
That's right. But I hate that Andorian.
So there are, and some people will like count the movies. Like I saw one person on Twitter that was like, no, this is the whatever, Star Trek adventure, because the movies. And I'm like, no, they didn't say adventure. They said episode. Pay attention. Words matter. Okay.
I guess it would be 813th or whatever.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But here's the deal. It depends on how you count it. Because I did an initial counting. I looked on Wikipedia, whatever, because that was the fastest way to go through all the episodes. And I did a count, and I originally came up with the first problem, which is, do you count the cage or not?
Do you count the cage, right?
So if you don't count the cage, and you go by every episode that you see in Wikipedia, you get 807 episodes.
Okay.
If you count the cage, you get 808.
Okay.
And so I'm like, well, hang on.
This is Jurassic Park level lying, Kevin.
Right. Oh boy. And so I thought, well, hang on, how else could you count it? And I worked at it, and I finally figured out all of the double length episodes. Like Encounter at Farpoint, All Good Things, The Emissary, What We Leave Behind.
So not like
The Caretaker.
Not like part 1 and 2, but like the ones that
were
2 hours long.
Yeah.
Originally aired as double length.
The Caretaker, Endgame, Broken Bow, all of those were originally aired as single episode.
That's
in
correct.
production.
That's correct.
In production and in script, they are single episodes. They were
Gotcha.
split up for syndication.
Yes.
So they're actually individual single episodes. And since The Cage, of course, was ultimately broadcast in the 80s. Oh, and there's Et in Arcadia Ego from Picard is also a two-parter. I mean, it's not a two-parter, but it's a double-length episode,
Double length.
which isn't split up for syndication, but it's still, yeah. So all of those together, plus The Cage, which of course was aired in the 1980s, that gives you 80 episodes for the original series, 22 for the animated series, 176 for Next Generation, 174 for Deep Space Nine, 170 for Voyager, 97 for Enterprise, 42 for Discovery, 10 for Short Treks, 9 for Picard, and 20 for Lower Decks, making 800 episodes. So that's the counting that they're using. So there you go.
Well done.
For the record, it took me some work to figure that out.
Well, if anybody was going to do it, it was going to be you.
What's that?
If anybody was going to do that work, it was going to be you.
Thank you very much. As we discussed at length last episode, my months of work tracking down the source of a single quotation from Gene.
Now you just cut all that out of the podcast, Kevin, and we'll be good.
All right, there you go. Oh boy. So, David, you came up with this idea of how to have this discussion of Star Trek at 800.
Yeah.
So you wanted us to each come up with our 8 favorite Star Trek episodes.
Yeah, top 1%.
You jerk. So, and we'll just sort of get into this conversation and see where it leads us, because we really don't know where we're going. But David, since this was your idea, well, I think what we should do is we should all just sort of go through our top 8 and just read them out. And then if you have honorable mentions, you can mention those too, and we'll just see where the crossovers are. Okay. And we'll go from there. But I think we should each just read our 8, and then we can talk about why our 8 are in there and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So, David, since this was your idea, let's start with you. Read us your 8.
All right. This is my top 8 episodes as of 10:49 p.m. on August 30th, 2021. I can't guarantee that this will be the same 5 minutes from now, but here we go. The first one that I wrote down is TNG's Darmok. That might be my number 1 of all 800. I think that it's fantastic. Anyway, we'll talk about it more later.
Okay.
The second one that one is the only one that I feel like is in any way ranked. The rest of these are more just sort of like, I like them all. Next one is TNG Measure of a Man. The next one after that is Voyager Year of Hell.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
After that is Voyager Equinox. Then Deep Space Nine, Far Beyond the Stars. Then the original series, City on the Edge of Forever. TNG, Cause and Effect.
Okay.
And then a wild card, the episode Twilight from Enterprise.
Okay.
So that's the one where Archer can't form long-term memories, and the Xindi destroy Earth, and the entirety of humanity has to migrate to SETI Alpha 5, and the whole thing gets resolved. Like the Xindi are coming to kill all the humans, and then they figure out a way to like turn back time by getting rid of whatever is inside Archer's brain, so he can make a different decision back in the past. So one thing you might notice about my list is that there's a lot of time travel shenanigans on it.
There is.
I like time travel shenanigans, and apparently, I made this list, and then I was like, wow, I think fully half of that list is time travel. So that's fine. I've also got some honorable mentions, if you want me to go through that.
Sure.
There's 4. Discovery, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, which I thought was the best of Discovery. Picard, Nepenthe. Lower Decks, Crisis Point, The Rise of Vindicta. And I just had to throw in Deep Space Nine in the Pale Moonlight because I thought it was another masterpiece, and I wanted to give it honorable mention.
Fascinating. All right. Okay. Mike, let's hear your list.
Oh man, see now I'm resisting the temptation to revise my list. There's so lots of good ones there. But these are the 8 that came easiest to my mind as I was making my list. So for, like you said, right now, for better or worse, number 1, and this always has been true, the Menagerie.
Oh,
Actually, my favorite Star Trek
episode.
It gives the instant history to the universe, and it's such a clever real-world problem-solving of how do we use all this original footage. So and it turns out it's pretty foundational to the franchise. What with strange new things, strange new worlds coming down the pike.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now I will say that was originally aired as 2 episodes.
It was. Well, so if I have to choose one, I'll choose part 1.
Oh, okay.
Because there's something about.
Oh, man.
Leonard
I didn't
Nimoy's
separate out my
intonation,
two-parters.
whatever. This is 13 years ago. The Enterprise and its commander, Captain Christopher. And then they stop it. And Chris, is that real? I mean, I could recite so much of that stupid episode. Starfleet Starbase operations, the Enterprise. I don't know. I love part 1 of the Menagerie. So
That's awesome.
All Good Things, which is a single. Double-length episode.
That's right.
The series finales of TNG, Best of Both Worlds. I guess I got to choose a part. It would be part 1.
I didn't choose parts. You don't have to choose parts.
Nah,
That's true. I didn't nail David on any of that, and I should have. Like Year of Hell, I should have nailed him on that, and I didn't.
From Deep Space Nine, I also have Far Beyond the Stars on my list. It's I saw it again not long ago. It's just so beautifully done, and
it is.
Unfortunately, still so timely for us as a society.
Yes,
but
agreed.
Excellent episode in every way. Plus, it's just so neat to see those actors, some of them out of their prosthetics. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yesterday's Enterprise from TNG with the Enterprise C. Remember Me from TNG, where Dr. Crusher's trapped in a static warp bubble. I love that one because it just makes some points about kind of what we were talking about with the Lower Decks episode, affirming that people matter. You know, they're not. You know, when at the climax of that episode, when it's not quite the climax, but it's just her and Picard on the bridge, and she says, "You don't think it's strange we're on a ship built for 1,000 people? Well, we've never needed a crew of 1,000 before." Yeah, she makes this impassioned monologue, and it's one of Gates McFadden's best moments in the whole series.
Yes.
In my opinion, when she's, Data sits here, never gets a joke, and Riker plays the trombone, and she mentions all these, they deserve better than this, they deserve. So that's a beautiful episode. The second pilot, so pilot's heavy on my list, Where No Man Has Gone Before. We touched on that, you and I, last week, Kevin, with Above All Else a God Needed Compassion.
Yeah,
again, I'm just kind of fascinated by proto-Trek, and so the last one I came up with on my list is the Corbomite Maneuver, which was the first regular episode produced. I think it's just the first regular episode produced, and still one of the most quintessential Star Trek stories ever told. Facing the unknown with fear, but getting over the fear, and refining peaceful ways to resolve conflict and building new bridges of understanding. So those are the ones that I say are my top 8 tonight.
That's awesome. Well, and I will tell you, I love Remember Me. Remember Me taught me how to spell Quayce, Quayce.
Oh,
has that served you well in your life?
Is it a word other than his name?
Yeah, Dalen Quayce. That's the doctor.
I know, but is it a word you'd need to know how to spell other than talking about that character?
No, but I know how to spell Quayce. Quayce. If I ever meet anybody named Quayce, I'll be like, hey, Quayce. They'll be like,
unless they spell it with a Y.
No. Yeah. Data does search like 600 different iterations or something like that.
That's right.
I will also say that I think Remember Me has similar vibes to Twilight, the last one that I mentioned from Enterprise. They both have that sort of like one person being able, one person at the wrong moment, or one person standing alone against something, and that sort of loneliness. It has a very melancholy feel to it. I think they both do, and I think that's a really interesting gear that Star Trek, being an ensemble show, doesn't get into that often, and so
that's
that's really interesting that both of us had such a solo episode.
And you said that was from season 3 of Enterprise?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Because that is my disgrace list of Star Trek. I have never seen season 3 of Enterprise.
Oh, okay.
So
wow.
I know I need to go back to. I gave up on the series briefly, and that was right when I did it. And I haven't gone back yet. So
I think
did you say all humanity goes to SETI Alpha 5 in that episode?
Yeah, isn't that another kick in the groin?
I know. Okay, well that is my resolution. I will get season 3 watched.
Yeah, you're bringing back visions of Jack Ransom to me with that. Mike, did you have any?
I did have some others that I had thought of. Yesteryear from the animated series, being pretty integral to Spock's backstory and his lore. There, Parallels from TNG has been a favorite of my wife's and mine for a long time. Just the one with Worf coming back from the Bat'leth tournament. Oh yeah, we love that one. And all those glimpses into the especially the alternate reality at the end where Riker's commanding the Enterprise and the Federation's like on the brink of destruction by the Borg and just chilling. This one's arguably not a good episode, but it's one of my favorites. Is There in Truth No Beauty? I've always been kind of fascinated by the Medusans, and the episode doesn't really hold up, but something about it it's got that 60s groovy thing going for it, and Diana Muldaur turns in a great performance, and I don't know, I just like it. Little Green Men from Deep Space Nine. I always laugh seeing the Ferengi slapping the side of their heads. The translator's supposed to be broken, and then the humans doing it back, and Quark scheming how he's going to make money off of it all. It's great. The pilot of Deep Space Nine, Emissary, is just again a quintessential Star Trek story, excellently told. Also from Deep Space Nine, Children of Time, where they find the planet that has all the Defiance crew's descendants on it. That's there is some time travel shenanigans for you, David, and the ethical questions that really, when they're helping their descendants till the soil and plant the crop that they know will never be harvested. There's something beautiful there about that. And then my last two were Balance of Terror and Arena from the original show. Again, very, very, very in stark relief what Star Trek is all about in terms of the morality of the thing. So.
Foundational.
So, Mike, you made up for Tim not being here by doing 2 sets of 8.
No one can make up for Tim not being here, but
that's true.
My list was a double length list, but just one list. So when we go back counting the lists on the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast, let it be known my list is just one list.
Do you want to go ahead and just name the other 784 episodes of Star Trek?
No, they would not all make a list of favorites, honestly.
No, they wouldn't. But they wouldn't. No, not for me either.
Nope.
True.
All right, so it's interesting to see the ones we have in common. So my list is interesting. I did this off the top of my head, and you guys came up with ones that I was like, oh gosh, yeah. Some of these that you guys listed, I specifically avoided because I was like, somebody's gonna say Measure of a Man, but there's still a couple on my list that I could have done that with, and I probably should have. But one of the ones that came to mind for me was the Drumhead. From TNG. And David, you have a lot to do with that because my appreciation for that episode has increased greatly since doing the blog post for it for Trektember. So I appreciate that. All Good Things is on here. So we have I have that in common with Mike. For sure. All Good Things. It's Only a Paper Moon from Deep Space Nine.
Oh yes.
One of my just all-time favorites. I love that one, especially after losing Aaron. I mean, it just means so much to me.
The Moon miniseries from Deep Space Nine is really good.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And Pale Moonlight and all that.
Yep. And then Far Beyond the Stars. I think we've all three mentioned Far Beyond the Stars.
Yes, yeah.
In this,
for good reason.
I find that for good
Absolutely.
reason. I think it's one of the all-time greats, and I'm excited that we all put it on there.
And I think honestly, seeing where our tastes overlap is really interesting too, because I think it speaks something of an episode in particular if all three of us put it on the list.
Yeah. I should have probably saved that for the end of my list, but yeah, no, that it's a great episode. It doesn't even take place.
Yeah.
in
Right.
in the place, you know,
Right,
you're talking about the
right.
place of Star Trek in so many ways, and yet it does,
Right.
you know, because it's all subtextual and it's all bound up in, and of course we go back to Deep Space Nine throughout the episode, but it's all bound up in that story, and
Right.
it's such a brilliant episode. It's just one of the all-time absolute best. If I had to pick a list of like top 10 like really best episodes of Star Trek, not just my favorites but the best, Far Beyond the Stars would have to be on it. On it. Another one that I love is Bem from the animated series. It's a great David Gerald episode.
Yeah, David Gerald.
They were trying to put it together for, I think they had tried to do it for TOS.
I think so.
And I've even seen some production photos of trying to make the Bem costume.
Boy, wouldn't that have
Bem,
been something
the Bem
to
creature?
see?
Yeah, it would have been impossible. Just about.
A colony creature, is that what they call them?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so that's a great episode. And then also there's a Voyager episode called Repentance. I don't know if you guys remember this. This is where there are these guys, and I've actually only seen it once, but I loved it so much. There are these guys who are both in prison on Deep Space Nine. They're transporting them somewhere, and one of the guys has committed these murders and everything. But it turns out that there's something wrong with his brain. Like he actually has a neurological disorder that he doesn't have like in himself intent to kill or whatever, but he did these terrible things because there's something wrong with his brain, and the doctor fixes his brain. And he loses all of his aggression and all of this stuff that was in him, and then he like confesses and begs the forgiveness of the family, and they don't forgive him, which is really interesting. But then there's another prisoner who is like, hey, I've got something wrong with my brain too. Why don't you fix me? And it's very clear that there's a difference between the two characters, that there really is somebody, one of them whose brain is the problem, and another one whose soul is the problem. And I find that just a fascinating episode.
That is interesting.
That's on there. Now, these other 4 that I have here, I couldn't decide which were on the list and which were honorable mentions. But I did have the Corbomite maneuver, just like you did, Mike. That one was the first Star Trek episode I showed my son. Because I was
choice.
like, because I was like, if you want to know what an essential Star Trek episode is, that's it.
Yep.
That's the essential Star Trek episode. And then Bread and Circuses, which I have a lot of problems with production wise, right? But it's about Jesus, so I love it. And then the other ones that I jockeyed for those final 2 positions were from Discovery, and I could have picked a lot of episodes from Discovery. But again, these are ones that I wrote on for Trektember, so they stick with me. The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry, and Choose Your Pain. And because those 2 interlink so much, that even when I was writing the article, I lost track of which episode was which.
It's almost a 2-parter,
Yeah. And we had to like adjust the way the articles were written, and the way they were introduced and stuff to make it all make sense, because I carried the through line. But that's just a gorgeous. That's some of my favorite Discovery. But again, getting into any series and picking out the favorites of just that series. I mean, Discovery. There's so much good stuff. Yeah. And so much of it that I've only seen once, and it's hard to say. But I did also tack on an honorable mention for Nepenthe as well. Because Nepenthe is just one of the great Star Trek episodes of all time. I think it's beautiful. So.
Yeah, and I think that there's probably an anti-recency bias in my list, that like maybe there might be a couple of the newer Trek episodes that should be on my top 8 that just aren't, because I haven't seen them a dozen times, like I've seen Year of Hell a dozen times, which frankly should have been a season of Voyager. Like it is excellent, an excellent concept. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, if that series were being made today, no doubt it would be.
Right.
It would be great.
Season. That'd be a great season arc, like especially with like the 10 or 12 episode seasons. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it'd be hard to watch.
Yeah,
but it would be spectacular.
Now I can't remember. Did either of you also say City on the Edge of Forever?
Nope.
I was going to comment. Nobody mentioned the one that everybody says, the quote-unquote proverbial everybody, is the best Star Trek episode ever.
I did.
Yeah,
I had
David
that one on my
did.
list. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
I mean, it's a classic for a reason, for my money. And seeing... I watched it again last year, I think, and I haven't seen it since. But also, like, reading the graphic novel version of Harlan Ellison's original script, it has such depth to it, and I think that really comes from it being written by a novelist. You know, you can sort of tell that, like, a novelist puts a lot more backstory into things that don't necessarily explicitly make it to the screen, but are there anyway, even if they're not explicitly on the screen. It also, I think, shows up a lot in Picard because, of course, the showrunner for that show is Michael Chabon, who's also a novelist. So I feel like that you can definitely feel that that extra depth of characterization and sort of plot dependence upon things that happened in the past that you may not ever see or may only ever get referenced. I just think that there's a lot to it. It's a very deep episode.
Well, I'd say the same is probably also true for Kirsten Byers' involvement in Discovery.
Sure.
You know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
You know, very, very accomplished novelist, Star Trek novelist.
Yep.
And so that has, I think, when I saw her name, I was like, okay, good.
Yeah.
We're in business.
Well, and talking about Star Trek being this place or being a framework upon which multiple different stories can be told, multiple different types of stories can be told. I think really that lends itself very well to that. Anytime you're building deep lore into the roots of the show like that, it just only increases the number of stories you can tell. Like Measure of a Man, which you had said you would have put on your list. It's Star Trek at its best, and it relies on so little lore behind it to like be able to understand it. Yeah. But because it is built upon the lore of who androids are and the sort of the undercurrent of not allowing personhood to people who may not look or feel like that, just undercurrent of who humanity is, even going on into the future, relying on those deep roots of history. Just really make that a rich episode. You don't have to know it going in. You don't have to know all of this history about it going in, but it still makes it one of the best episodes. Same thing with, in the opposite direction with Equinox, whereas Measure of a Man is showing like what Starfleet does when it really does its best work. Equinox is the opposite, right? It shows what happens to a Starfleet vessel when everything is stripped away and they have nothing. And they start... Voyager falls off that fence one way, Equinox falls off that fence the other way, and I think that's why that one made it onto my list too, is because it's sort of the not the mirror universe version, but the sort of inverse of what Star Trek is supposed to be, and you don't have to know what Star Trek is because they have Voyager there to compare it to, but you do get a definite different jolt of feeling and emotion when you see a Starfleet vessel, and you know what a Starfleet vessel looks like in the Next Generation, just in this crumbling state of disrepair and doing these horrible things, and that just it has this visceral feel to it. And so I think in addition to all of my episodes having a lot of my episodes having some sort of time travel shenanigans, I think a lot of my episodes have something to do with where they're using the framework of Star Trek to tell a really interesting story. And I think, going back to you talking about what Star Trek was last week, I think Star Trek is that world and that ability to tell interesting and different and unique stories that really look at the human condition, but out there, putting them on something else that is not here. And all 800 episodes, I think, do that to varying levels of success. But I think those 8 that I mentioned were the top. So,
yeah, I would say all 800 probably do that, except for the Jihad, the Slaver Weapon, Masks, Sub Rosa, and Threshold. But
yeah.
Is he still a salamander? That was a great line of the Lower Decks episode.
So good.
Yes. Yes.
So good. And possibly also Second Contact from LDS, I have to say, too. Sorry. But yeah. Well, and what's interesting about, I'm looking at our lists, and I, there are only 3 episodes that we all 3 have in common. It's All Good Things, the Corbomite. Well, no, there's only 3 episodes that any of us have that have any crossover, and that's All Good Things, the Corbomite Maneuver, and Far Beyond the Stars. Far Beyond the Stars is the only one we all 3 have. But I find it interesting that those 3 episodes show up on all our lists, one way or another. Those are the ones that we even in our honorable mentions, we didn't really mirror each other. Although I wrote down Nepenthe, but that was after you already, when you said it on your honorable mentions, that's when it made it onto my honorable mentions. So that doesn't really count. But I find that interesting, that it's those 3. And I do feel like, you were talking about this sort of depth and the richness and the connection to history and all of that. I mean, the Corbomite Maneuver is a pretty simple episode, right? It's got one story. There's no B story. It's very straightforward. And it has some ways in which it maybe moves a little too slow but the tension really does pretty much stay believably built throughout the episode. And of course the reveal at the end is great, but it does sort of tap into that that mysterious other, which I think is I don't want to say it's the core, but it's one of those core things in Star Trek of encountering the mysterious other and learning about them rather than destroying them.
Yeah, they quote Kirk's speech in this 55th anniversary trailer they've got for Star Trek Day. I mean,
oh, nice.
They know that's one of the touchstones.
Yeah, it is. It really
there's
is.
Nothing. What's the exact quote? There's nothing unknown, only things temporarily not understood, or something along those lines. And they even had Kelvin Universe Kirk say something along those lines in Star Trek Beyond.
That's right. And that was an intentional callback. To that. And so I think that's very true, and that's very core. And even laying that over, that theme gets expanded and gets moved in some new ways in All Good Things, again with those time travel shenanigans that David's so fond of. But it's that searching after a mystery and not taking the easy explanation. Yeah. And it is also connected to, it's really connected to the very origins of humanity itself and the whole history of our race. Not just Picard's history. Yeah. Although it's connected to Picard's history, and that gives us a through line and a structure, but it goes to those deep roots of who we are and why we are. Yeah. And that's the mystery that we're trying to solve, is how to save that, how to rescue it. And that then is intrinsically involved with our connection to the whole of humanity and to the story of human history, which I think from a Christian perspective is something that we always have to hold as important, as sort of a core of who we are, is why we're here, why we're working out our salvation rather than just God snapping God's fingers and making everything okay. And the importance of bringing the kingdom, here and now, not just hoping for being a part of the kingdom there and then, because of that human connection. That's something that really is one of the reasons Star Trek deepened and broadened my faith, because it helped me do what Dr. Noggle was encouraging all of us to do, which is embrace Christian humanism, to understand that humanity and deeply understanding humanity, deeply appreciating and loving humanity, and being amazed by humanity is intrinsic to the gospel. The gospel is a human story. It's not just a story about, the big being on the white cloud doing the magical things. It's a human story bound up in a human person and in a group of human persons of whom we are a part. And that connectedness of human history, that's part of the biblical narrative too. So I think
and I mean, God is the God of story, and so all of this being expressed, God said, "Let there be light," and the story that He has been telling and unwinding over so long, being expressed and echoed in various ways throughout the things that we write and enjoy and listen to. That's why we're talking about this stuff, and that's why it gets into our head, is because the story that He wrote on our hearts is finding something to resonate with. And I think you're absolutely right. This is what we were made for. We're seeing an echo of what we were made for, and I think that's what's beautiful about really good narrative work, really good storytelling. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to step.
No, go ahead.
But that tees up directly this third episode we have in common, Far Beyond the Stars, which is about Benny Russell telling a better story. This is a story about a better future for the human race, and also the piece Kevin's talking about is not just Benny Russell, Cisco, in that episode says, wishing never changed a damn thing, So it's not just that. I think that episode, every time I see it, it challenges me more than the last time I watched it, and I find it a more bracing challenge. Like, okay, these are the high-minded ideals, but what are you willing to do, Mike, to make them a reality? What are you willing to do to put your what are you willing to do and put on the line to make this better story of the future happen? And again, acknowledging and giving thanks that we're saved by grace and that God accomplishes the kingdom and we don't, but we still have things to do, and we still have responsibility, And so I think finding the way forward there is important. And so I think that episode really, for all that it doesn't have the traditional Star Trek trappings for most of it, it's this idea of, here's the vision. So now, when you turn off the TV, what are you willing to do to make it happen?
Well, and here's the thing, though. You talk about it not being original Star Trek vision, but go back to that memo that we read last week. Star Trek is. David was talking about bringing that up again this week. What Star Trek is, that original idea from Gene Roddenberry in 1964. He talked about it as an anthology series. And he talked about exploring kind of these different pockets. And if you look at the episodes that he lists, he talks about, being a primitive man, million years BC, and being, witnessing the crucifixion, on an alien world, and all that sort of stuff. There are these little pockets of existence. I mean, it's almost like Twilight Zone, And so I really think Far Beyond the Stars, in that sense, does work very well into that original Star Trek vision, because it is a pocket of reality, that we go to more than we often get going to a new planet this week. But I'm as you're talking about the episode too, I'm thinking, there's even something divine, if you will, about the way Benny Russell functions in that story. You're talking about David. You're talking about God being a God of story, and Benny is writing a story. And there's a sense, a prophetic sensibility to Benny. Write the words, brother Benny.
The words of the prophets.
The words of the prophets, and so you have that coming in, but then there's that whole conversation that Ben has with Joseph in the last scene, where he has that tagline of the episode, perhaps maybe somewhere far beyond all those distant stars, Benny Russell is dreaming of us. And I think there's very much a sense, and Gene saw this too. We were talking last week about Gene's vision of God and God being sort of the creative impulse, if you will, and the thing that makes us make art. He talked about sitting down at your typewriter and typing for a while and then getting to the end and going, what just happened?
Yeah.
and just feeling like you were kind of outside of yourself for a while as this creative impulse just sort of moved you. I reminded of Plato's view of the muse, very much was something that he related to and related to God. And there's a good reason for that. I think one of the messages that I've talked about since I started this was that we are created to be creators. And God is at work in all of our human endeavors, but in a particular way in our creative efforts, and even when we're unaware. That's what gives us the opportunity to take stories and talk about them in this way, because when we create, we are mirroring our Creator. There are all sorts of creatures on this planet that are painted, but we are the only painters.
We are both the dreamer and the dream.
We are the dreamer and the dream, exactly. And so as Benny Russell is writing, he's imaging his creator in that way. Not just by creating something, but by what he's creating and why he's creating it. For a better world for himself and people like him, and for everybody else along with him. Not to the detriment of everybody else, but to lift everyone up. And that's the whole view of Star Trek. And then when Ben says that thing at the end about somewhere Benny Russell is dreaming of us, I mean, that gives him this sort of divine quality, which really fits into Gene's cosmology, of all of us sort of becoming God, right?
Yeah.
But as Mike and I talked about last week, that's not dissimilar from a Christian vision of us at least being like God, of us at least coming to be in full fellowship and communion with God. There is something divine in what we do as human beings. And boy, that's just, we talk about 800 episodes later, what is Star Trek? It's so much more diverse and so much more varied than it ever was dreamt of being in that little page in 1964. But at the same time, it's fulfilling everything that's on that list, including the stuff that brings in God and brings in religion and brings in Christ. Those things were very much a part of Gene Roddenberry's imagination. And they're very much a part of the fabric of, and I talked about it in Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb Cry and Choose Your Pain on Trektember. Go check it out. They're very much, they're woven into the fabric. Trektember.com. Yeah, check it out. But they're woven into the fabric of what Star Trek is, and we can't escape it. And because it's woven into the fabric of our humanity. So I think the better our stories speak to our humanity, the better our stories speak to the divine.
Yep.
Yay!
Well said.
But let us not forget the most important assignment on board a Star Trek starship is the secretary to the captain.
Secretary to the captain, that's right.
Secretaries trained for the kingdom.
Become the secretary. You'll be the most popular. Oh my God!
Easily.
The most popular, because you're out of this world. Oh boy!
I'm going to put my hair in a beehive.
Oh boy. Well, guys, I think we did a pretty good job here.
Yeah,
I think this turned into an episode. It ain't bad.
I think so too.
Bad.
All right, so with that, I think it's time for audience question. All right, so what's our audience question, David?
Well, this time around, we thought, because it's the 800th episode anniversary of Star Trek, we thought that we would actually pitch the audience question to the audience.
Dun, dun, dun!
I see what we did there.
We got ourselves off the hook.
Yeah.
So, what is our audience?
Saying.
What's our question to the audience, David?
All right. So, audience, you heard what our top 8 episodes were. Mike and Kevin and I all had our takes on what the top 8 episodes for our personal favorites were. What are your top 8 episodes? What are your top 1% of? Although by the time we read these off, they're going to be 801. But what are the top 8 episodes or more? They're going to be 801 or more. But what are the top 8 episodes that you have watched of Star Trek that you go back to over and over, or that you think about all the time, or that really drive a lot of questions in your heart or in your mind? Tell us about them. We want to hear about them, and we want to hear why you like them. So send us an email, gospeltrekpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what your favorite episodes of all Star Trek everywhere are from the original series, animated series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, Lower Decks, Picard, all of them. Tell us what your favorites are. We'd love to hear it, and we'll read some good lists on the air if we get any good lists.
We're going to get great lists.
I think
everybody's going to send them in. I'm looking forward to
it. We've got great listeners, and I think we're going to definitely get some great thoughts and great lists. Right. And tell us what you think of our list. Tell us how crazy you think ours are.
Sure. Awesome. That's good. I'm excited about it. Fill our mailbag, everybody. We love it. And fill our mailbag also with questions for us to answer on the show. Otherwise, next week we'll ask you another question.
Don't make us do it. Don't think we
Don't
won't.
make us do it.
Hey, here's a quick question. They said Voyager is voy to save so much time.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So is the Lower Decks going to be called low for time-saving purposes in the future?
Actually, the official initialism for Lower Decks is LDS.
Yeah, but that's exactly the same number of syllables as Lower Decks.
Lower Decks, which doesn't help at all.
Same thing Spock did a little too much of back at Berkeley in the
exactly.
60s.
That is precisely the reason why it's LDS. It's a callback.
They are just so clever.
They're so callback happy. Yep. They even do it with their initialism. They can't help it.
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here, for bringing your lists, for celebrating 800 episodes of Star Trek with us. This has been fantastic, guys. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So, David, what are we going to be doing next week?
Next week, we're going to be celebrating Star Trek Day by reviewing Lower Decks Season 2, Episode 4, Mugato Gumato.
Oh, that should be good.
Thank you very much,
When the Mugato's in the title. Oh.
What do you think of that? Oh, boy.
Yep.
They got to...
Are we going to have the first Canutu witch woman in Starfleet?
Oh, boy. Oh, well, that's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to drop on Star Trek Day, and then we'll be having festivities, I'm sure. So I hope everyone will join us. In the meantime, please like, share, rate, comment, and subscribe. And also be sure to send us your questions. Gospel According to Star Trek on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, or gospeltrekpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to discuss your question on the show. Or you can support the show at patreon.com/gospeltrekpodcast. Or you can just write on the Anchor page, anchor.fm/GATST. You can become a supporter there. Either way, you're going to get some cool... We just sent some cool outtakes from the show to our supporters just a couple of days ago, and you'll get those at least every month. You're going to get cool stuff from us, and we hope you enjoy it. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and until next time.
I'm Mike Poteet.
I'm David Atwell.
And I'm Kevin Sinise. And as Jesus said in John 10:10, live long and prosper. See you next time.